All right, Graham Romini here with BleacherReport.com. Today we're talking season 2 of Heels coming up this summer. Super exciting stuff. And obviously one of the stars of the show, Stephen Amell, the face of the franchise, so to speak, heading into the second season of the show. Super excited to be talking here today, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing excellent, man. I'm looking forward to the second season of the show, especially for all the wrestling fans out there. I feel like now as we go further and, years and years into this, wrestling, I feel like there's more and more wrestling shows out there and Heels being one of
Sure.
them, especially for wrestling fans that haven't been wrestling fans in a long time or have never been wrestling fans. I feel like a show like this is a great representative of what the business is. Being a fan yourself, I'm sure you've talked about this before. Talk a little bit about that and kind of changing the perception of what the business is and kind of bringing new eyes on the product, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, there's certain things that like from the 80s and the 90s and even the early aughts that I think people just thought, well, that's like a fringe activity. That's just a fringe thing that people do, right? Be it comic book conventions or would you even call it like nerd culture or whatever?
Yeah.
And wrestling's one of those things that fell into that where it's like, oh no, that's a peripheral thing that certain people like. No, fuck that. The Met Gala is a peripheral thing that certain people like. Professional wrestling is a global industry that has fans everywhere in the world. And it just so happens that, there are just certain people that kind of spoke down at it like, oh, yeah, wrestling? Oh, isn't that for kids? Isn't that on Sunday morning? Isn't it fake? It's like, yeah, guys, so's House of the Dragon. Okay, just enjoy it. Like people enjoy it. And I think what we do on the show pretty consistently is take someone who's not a fan, like for example, Stacy, my wife, Allison Luff, her character, right? Like, she's not a huge wrestling fan per se, but she can appreciate that Jack works hard at it. And, when she brings, someone like Jen Lucier later in the season who doesn't know, the first thing about professional wrestling, but she might pop for one character. All right. In this case, Crystal. Right. And that's all you need. Right. You could have someone who's like, I don't get professional wrestling, but they think that the dad is hilarious. And then that character becomes a gateway in for them. So, I'm glad that wrestling is getting its due, but like at the same time, as someone that's been here from the beginning, I'm not too concerned with like changing hearts and minds when it comes to wrestling, right? Like if you like it, great. If you
Yeah.
don't, great. But let's be specific. If you don't like it, okay, you don't have to tell me why you don't like it. Okay, just don't like it, like in silence by yourself. I don't need the reason why you don't like it. Okay, I don't like most of your shit, so I guarantee you, and I don't talk about it.
No, that's a good attitude to have. I feel like, especially, I mean, that goes really with everything. I feel like people have to elaborate why we don't like something. If you don't like it,
Sure.
it's not going to be for you.
It's like all the New Yorkers that extol the virtues of New York. And you're like, okay, well then why do you live in California? Well, it's like, cool. Move back. We don't care. Fine. Just go ahead. Way you go. We're good.
Exactly. I feel like we get a lot of that same sort of attitude as well. In wrestling itself, listen, wrestling fans, as a wrestling fan myself, obviously, I feel like there are few people who dislike wrestling more than wrestling fans themselves at times, depending on what we can see on the
Sure.
product. I mean,
Sure.
that's just the nature of the business, But talking
Sure.
about the
We
flip side
are.
as well.
Yeah.
What was
Yeah.
that?
We are masochists a little bit. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it goes both ways. But that being said as well, you talk about kind of like the fan aspect and, like I was mentioning, like bringing those new fans in and stuff like that. What about on the flip side, especially again, having relationships with wrestlers over the last couple of years, having a working relationship with WWE in the past, AEW, stuff like that, your fair share amount of people in the business. Who have you heard from since the first season of the show that in a way you've kind of done wrestling justice and representing it as well as you have and everyone else on the show from the first season to now?
Okay, some great people, right? I'm gonna do some deep cuts here because I have been to a bunch of AEW shows and WWE shows, and obviously was just recently at Mania and did the Royal Rumble and caught up with a bunch of friends. But the three people who I've really, really, really enjoyed getting some feedback from are the Big Show, Paul White. Saw him at AEW Grand Slam when the first season was airing, and and he wanted to talk about the show nonstop.
Wow.
Arn Anderson pulled me aside and goes, "How in the fuck did you hear about some of these stories?" And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about, man. I don't write the show. Like, are they real? Did they happen?" He's like, "Oh boy, yeah, I'll tell you." And the last guy was Sergeant Slaughter. A huge fan of the show.
Interesting. I didn't even think that guy would watch television at this point, you know?
Look, man. I mean, so look, he told me all about we got to talk about the show, and then I got to talk with him about the whole like Warrior Hulk Hogan WrestleMania 7 purple belt weird thing, which is a story that he told me. But no, they seem to people in the business seem to really dig it, and it's like anything. I think that professional wrestlers so often have to be treated like they're the weird attraction at the circus, and they're just working at their craft like anybody else, trying to get better like anybody else, trying to elicit a reaction from someone and entertain people just like everyone else. So the fact that we've written a show where we're just trying to show that these guys are just like hard working class people like everyone else is something that they all appreciate.
Is there anyone, like you mentioned, Big Show, Arn Anderson? I mean, these are deep cuts, like you said, Sergeant Slaughter. I mean, really, anyone who isn't even a wrestling fan probably remembers Sergeant Slaughter from his heyday 30 years ago, stuff like that. These are obviously top names in the business. Is there stuff, and obviously they love the show, like you said, is there stuff that they say that you incorporate into the second season of the show, or advice that you take from them, like, this is something that we want to see represented, or this is something, maybe it's a bit more realistic if you were to do it this way, or is it just like they just enjoy watching the show?
No one's really pointing anything out. But we do try. There are certain things that I have always tried to incorporate. I think it might actually be in the. Yeah, no, it's in the second season, where I believe we have Big Jim and Rooster, and it's before the memorial show, and they're running through their match in the back, and that's always something that I found really, really fascinating. I'll never forget my match at SummerSlam in 2015. Being back there, with Cody and Stu and Neville, and it's like going through the match, and it's this sort of shorthand, and everyone's moving, and people kind of like touching each other lightly, and it's like, we do this, okay, then I come in, bang, 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 we go to the corner, and I had never seen that before as a wrestling fan. So I spoke with Michael O'Malley about that, and I'm like, we got to work this into the show. And I think we see it in the early part of the second season, where we got two guys that are about to go out, and they're going by the numbers, with a referee there. And I thought that was really cool, doing that. And and we get into some promo stuff this year. I mean, Chris Bauer's got a great scene about crafting a promo and all these things. So it's cool stuff.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fascinating look behind the scenes that the show provides, that I feel like, especially even wrestling fans, like I said, wrestling fans have seen it all, from like all the shows and the documentaries and the dark side, so to speak, of the business. But this kind of shines a different light on it, especially for those that aren't familiar with the business. Kind of gives you a newfound appreciation for wrestling, whether you're a fan already, haven't been a fan in a while, have never been a fan, or whatever. To kind of go back to what you were saying before, some people may never like wrestling, but as long as they can understand it more, that's kind of like the key, whether that's the goal or not with a show like this. But you talk about your first match from SummerSlam, which at this point, that's crazy. It was 8 years ago, 2015. That's wild. And then you wrestle again a couple of years later, All In, Christopher Daniels in Chicago. Again, we're coming up on the 5-year anniversary of that, which it feels like it was yesterday. I'm sure you feel the same, but
my hip doesn't feel that way, but yes, I feel that way.
Well, talking about your hip, I mean, you come off a match like that and you do the 2 seasons of this show. Do you feel like, all right, this is something I would want to do again? Or you're like, all right, I kind of got out of my system and I'll just kind of work on this physical side of it?
No, because when I did it previously, so 3 matches. So there's one in 2015, So one in 2015 at SummerSlam. There's a Ring of Honor show, which I believe was either in late 2017 or early 2018.
Right. Yes.
Uh, and which was really cool. And then there was the All In show, which again, coming up on 5 years of that. I was very much like, I'm proud of those matches, obviously. But I will say that I had no ring cardio whatsoever. And I was in the middle of shooting Arrow. I wasn't really doing any cardio. So I blew up both times or all 3 times, even though 2 of them were tag matches. But I would just say that the past couple of years on the show, before I'm trying to learn how to do a coast to coast, or like how to do an enziguri, or how to springboard, or just, I was faking it. We were coming up with sequences like, can Cody set you up for a suplex, and can you roll over his back and land on your feet? Yeah, I can do that. Okay, let's do that. Whereas now, I actually understand a little bit better the psychology, how to pace yourself in the ring, all these things. So, to that extent, and Logan Paul and Bad Bunny have taken the quote unquote celebrity appearances, and they've taken what I tried to build on, and they've taken it like 8 levels higher. Okay, so I'm very competitive. So now I've got to come back.
I was going to say, going off that, any chance we could see you and Logan Paul or Bad Bunny WrestleMania 40, booking it right now?
I mean, look, man, fantasy booking. I'd love to have a Mania match. As Cody says all the time, I'm one good match away from the Hall of Fame. One good match. Now I have a different standard than like everyone else. Like if I was just a professional wrestler and not sort of an interloping quote unquote celebrity appearance every once in a while, I'd have much more work to do. But I feel like for that wing of the WWE Hall of Fame, I'm like one good match away. And a Mania match counts. A Mania match counts as like 10 matches. So we'll see.
I was going to say, you say as if there's criteria there for a Hall of Fame induction. They've inducted people that have never even wrestled a match before, so I think you're in pretty good.
I know, but I'm putting myself in the. It's the Snoop Dogg Arnold Schwarzenegger wing of the Hall of Fame. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
We used to call it the Donald Trump wing of the Hall of Fame, but we don't so much anymore.
Love to hear it, man. That's fantastic. I'm looking forward to the second season of the show. This is great stuff. Hopefully everyone else could check it out as well coming up this summer. Stephen, so great talking to you, man. Thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Graham. I appreciate it, man.